When I came here, I thought I would like to give a present to you. So I thought, what could be delightful? And so I thought, you like German poets.
Yes.
So maybe I should bring a translated poem of a German poet.
Okay.
And I would like to say it to you. If it's okay?
Of course, that's fine. You have to tell me who I'm listening to.
Yeah, I would.
Maybe you asked me to guess it. I don't know.
Yeah, but I don't want to embarrass anybody, not you. Just but I would like you to tell me how you what your feelings are, because you are a sensible person. When once this generation has cleansed its shame, has thrown from its neck the villain's yoke, in its entrails feels but hunger for honor, then from the battlefield covered with endless graves will flash the bloody gleam. Then through the clouds will rush roaring armies, then through the fields will rage the horror of horrors, the third storm, the return of the dead. If ever this nation from her cowardly slackness remembers her election, her mission, she will receive the divine explanation of unspeakable dread. Then hands will be raised, and mouths will sound in praise of her birth. Then in the morning breeze a true emblem will flutter, the royal standard, and bow itself in greeting to the noble, the heroes.
You have heard me say, and when we were together before, I'm sure you heard me say, that this time German strength, and Germany will have honor. There is a renaissance now taking place, and it's only beginning. But the sensitive German, you call it sensible German, can sense it. There is a renaissance, and this afternoon I want to talk about honor, Ehre, and Würdigkeit, dignity.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about strength,
Yeah.
especially strength in, of course, in both Deutscher Mann und Deutsche Frau, but also, more importantly, in German men, because German men have lost the plot. They don't know if they start to feel strong, then they're immediately uncomfortable, unbequem.
Yeah.
And so that puts an extra burden on German women. Mm-hmm. And I try to pay, I love the Germans, and so wherever I'm at with Germans, I try to pay close attention to them.
Yeah.
I observe them because I want to understand how they're feeling and how do they interact with others. And even this morning at breakfast, I was looking around, and a German woman always has a little bit, ein bisschen Angst around her eyes, because she carries more of a burden. You don't see that hardly ever around American women because they don't carry a burden. You know, they have a sense of freedom and a spontaneity and things. But German women don't live in that world. And so when I heard your poem, I heard a kind of strength that is too strong for Germans. I don't want Germans to fall back into a strength that leads them to violence. At my last meeting I held, it was a large meeting, and a woman stood up and she said, "William, you want us to become strong again." physically strong. And she said, we're not physically strong. And you want us to become emotionally strong. And you want us to become spiritually strong. Fine, we're with you, okay? But what is the physical strength for? Does that mean that we will have violence? And does that mean that we will have violence against immigrants? And I said, no. You know, everyone in this room knows that I have power. And that power cannot be used for me. It must be used only to set Germany free. That's the only way it can be used. But if I sense violence, or I hear about violence, or I hear in your poem something that could lead to violence, the standard that is raised, okay, then I'm opposed to that. But not only am I opposed to it in my opinion, meine Meinung, but I'm also opposed to it with the power that I have been given. And so if a German or a group of Germans are lead them to harm others, now they find me in opposition, and they can't win, and they know they can't win. And matter of fact, if you oppose me, you will lose. And most groups know that, and so they're uncomfortable with that, and that's where I want them to be. Violence will never work in Germany. Love is the only thing that will work, but it has to be a strong love, Stephan. And that is what I need. That is the nuance that I need to bring to all of Germany. I want you to be strong. Matter of fact, I demand that you be strong, yeah. Okay? But it is not a strength to harm, and it is not a strength to dominate, and it is not a strength where the patterns of words leads you to the point where eventually you end up harming other people, because you will be crushed again if you go down that path. But if you are extremely strong and you keep love at the center, I can promise you, versprochen, that you will not be harmed. No one will come from outside and do harm to you if you keep love at the center. So I've had, today's meeting will be number 198.
Wow.
198 meetings. And so this is what I drive home to them. And the majority of people understand it intuitively. They understand it immediately. We have been strong in the past, but we didn't know how to share love. Mm-hmm. We could love our families, but outside our patriotism or our nationalism or our poetry, and matter of fact, what you read to me was the kind of poetry that Germans have read, and it leads them to believe in a dominance. Eventually, they leave in a dominance. Germans are extremely talented, and they have distinct talents, but they are not dominant. They are not superior, but they are very, very special in their role. And they have to begin playing that role fully again. The world is in desperate need of Germans to be Germans once again.
Mm-hmm. So may I reveal who was?
Yes, of course.
Okay, this was Stephan George.
Yes, I was going to say there were two people, and George would have been one of them, and of course Klaus von Stauffenberg and his brother Berchtold, and there were quite a few young noblemen who were disciples of Stephan George.
Uh-huh. Did you study the German resistance?
Well, I have had a lifetime to make myself aware of everything that might impact German thought today. Mm-hmm. And, you can't go to hardly any city in Germany that you don't find a Stauffenberg Weg or a Stauffenberg something. And yet, of course, he and Berchtold were disciples of Stephan George, mm-hmm. and others.
Alexander also.
Yes, yes, yes. But there were quite a few extremely bright young noblemen at that time who found Stephan and his works and his words to be almost like a spiritual guru for them. They were attracted to him like a magnet. So,
Yeah.
not like a poet, but like a magnet. So yes, that would have been one of the two that I would have guessed. So.
Okay, great. I'm impressed because in Germany, I don't think I can meet 1% of people who know Stephan Georgi at all.
Yes. Well, you know, like many others, we don't really know as much about Georga as we would like. He was somewhat of a esoteric type of character who kind of floated a little bit in the air. But also, when the Nazis came to power, they found some of his works to be attractive, but we never really know whether he wanted to be found attractive. He never made it really clear as to where he stood, or what he really liked, or whatever else. So.
Yeah. He behaved like a chameleon.
Yeah, he was a chameleon, and he used his intelligence to stay, what I call, just in the navel. He was always a little bit in the navel, and maybe a poet. Maybe that's a natural place for a poet, especially a poet who wrote what he wrote. So.
And he went to Switzerland, and I believe he committed suicide. He had don't you think so? He had a physical specialty with kidneys, and then he knew what not to eat and drink, but he did so just to pass over.
Yes, I don't know that story. I have learned a long time ago that if I have a vacuum in my knowledge, it's best to say, I don't know. So I don't know how he died. I know he had some very tragic moments in his life where people who were very close to him died at young ages, and
Maximim.
Yes, of course, and that was a great trauma, and he was a slightly changed person by those traumas. So, and that's one of the things that I want now for Germans is to learn how to mourn, and to be able to mourn, and to have a sense of normalcy. In their emotions, where their emotions are not attributed to something by somebody else, but in the way that a man from France, or a man from Canada, or a woman from Mozambique can go through a full range of emotions without being judged. So I want Germans to be able to rest easy. I saw in a hotel the other day one of the big grandfather clocks, and it had a pendulum, and it was very expensive old clock, probably from the 19th century, but the pendulum was so accurate that it only moved a quarter of an inch like this, and yet the time was virtually perfect. So that's what I want for Germany, is to be normal and to be able to rest comfortably in the center, where small movements have a momentum and are enough to carry their lives. They don't have to work so hard as they do today.
Yeah.